if you figure out the kind of schedule that Jared has over the course of a day, I think we're very lucky to grab him by the time the evening's coming around. And I really appreciate the fact that I know you've had a big, long day, lots of crazy things going on. But can I ask you a question out of the blue, nothing to do with work? How's this White House thingy turning out for you?
It's I have to say it's something that I never expected in my life I would have the privilege of doing, to serve the country at this capacity. It's been for us an absolute honor. I mean, working for this president and having the opportunity to push forward the change that he's pushing for this country and for the world has been absolutely tremendous. And I was just on the Hill. I was meeting with a whole bunch of lawmakers, believe it or not, from the Democratic side and the Republican side. That does happen in Washington. And we were talking about a bill we got passed last year, which was the First Step Act, which was an overhaul of our prison system and some changes to our criminal justice system. And what we found is that it's really having a tremendous impact. We put it in place. We've been doing the implementation. And what is rewarding for me is that in politics, you're always seeing the people who are fighting. You're reading the headlines and you see the noise when you're out in the hinterlands. But what I find is up close, we're able to see the people we're impacting, the difference that we're making to people's lives. And it's very, very real. I mean, today you have an unemployment rate that's about 3.6%. We have more job openings than we have people looking for jobs. I think in the last quarter, 73% of the people who got jobs were not previously in the workforce. We're bringing people off the sidelines. Wages are rising for the first time in about 18 years. And I think these policies are working. So again, I give the president a lot of credit for keeping to his promises, for working hard, making sure that the system isn't able to stall and not move as quickly as he wants it to. And I feel like it's been an amazing privilege to be a part of it and to help make a lot of progress.
I've watched you over the last couple of years, and you've picked a few causes that you care about, and those are the ones you're focused on. And the prison reform one came out from, I didn't realize that you were interested in it, but I saw you pick it up and drive it very hard. And then I've seen you pick up another one, which is immigration. And in fact, we were talking about this when you and I ran into each other at the Business Council meeting, and you just made this big announcement of trying to make real progress in immigration reform, kind of like a vision statement. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why is it important to you? What are you trying to get done? How are you trying to change it? What's the logic of what you're trying to do?
Sure. So I do a lot of different things in the White House, but the president also asked me to take on special projects sometimes. And I do find from the White House you have the ability to bring people together and try to focus on something and drive it in a real way. Now, a lot of you are business people, so I think about problem solving very similar in the government sense to how we thought about it in the business sense. And sometimes people say it's not how it's done in a government sense, but the reason why I'm being assigned these problems is because they haven't been solved to date. So after we finished the criminal justice reform, the president said, well, can you now give a shot to immigration reform? I think that it's something that's been talked about for a long time, and something that we need to bring a fresh way of doing it and a fresh way of thinking to try and do it. So the first thing I did was I brought in about 48 different groups on the Republican side to try to understand what their position was. So we did 4 listening sessions, about an hour and a half each, with about 12 groups, and we went around the table, and I heard very similar things from people. People were for merit, they were for border security, and then they were also very quick to say what they were against. And one thing that I hate about Washington more than anything is I hate all the people who are just talking about what they're against. I like hearing what you're for. You'll never hear me talking about what I'm against. I like saying, this is my proposal, this is what I'm for, and if you have criticisms or critique, let's talk about the details, let's try to sit down, let's try to resolve it. And so what I did was I said, okay, well, send me your proposals. But ironically, I hadn't found a lot of very detailed proposals on all these things. So what we did is we got a lot of our people together, and we tried to come up with a merit-based immigration system, which is what the president wants. And we designed a system that we believe will lead to continuing rising wages in this country for people. Right now, a lot of the critics of the immigration system says that it imports cheap labor and it impacts the poorest Americans by keeping a ceiling on how much wages can rise. So what we wanted to do is figure out where are the places where our economy needs workers, and then we studied what happened in Australia and Canada, New Zealand, some of the systems that have merit-based systems.
With the points-based and merit-based systems.
Very, very good, with diversity pooling and all different types of things. And what we did is we developed a system that we think is very, very good. And so we also met with all the Border Patrol professionals and basically said, what resources do you need in order to really feel like you can secure the border? And we basically took both those things, we detailed, and we put them together. Right now, we've been meeting mostly with the Republican conference to try to see if we can get some unanimous thinking on what it is, because I found that in the last 3 immigration debates, what happened was people had different ideas of what border security was, and some people think that the proposals were great, some people think they were terrible, but there was no agreement on the Republican side for what it is. And I just find that, if you ever want to, make it a negotiation, you have to know what you're trying to accomplish and what you want to get. So the goal is really for the president to lay out his vision. Normally, the president doesn't write the bill, but we've really worked on writing the bill, and we've worked with a lot of the Senate staffs to do it. And the hope is that we'll put it out, and it'll be something that people will take seriously. They'll evaluate it. I find in Washington, people are usually very afraid to put out detail because you get attacked in the detail. We get attacked every day for anything anyway, so we're a little immune to worrying about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put out a lot of detail about what our proposal is, and again, hopefully if people like it, they'll say that, and then if people have different comments or different specifics, they'll say that too, and we'll keep evolving and we're doing it. But we think that it's a critical issue that needs to be addressed, needs to be resolved, and I think the president is finally putting together a proposal that's representative of his values and his position on the issue. And again, this bill that's coming out, this is not a Jared Kushner proposal, this is really a President Trump proposal, and I've just been trying to work with the different team that he put together to come up with the idea, put it in detail, and I'm more the project manager to try and put it together and then help see where it goes from there. So I was on the Hill having some meetings about that too, and I think there's a lot of enthusiasm about it. And I think that right now everyone can agree on one thing with immigration, which is that our system is broken and we have a problem. Unfortunately, though, I see a lot of people complaining, but I don't see many people putting forward constructive ideas on how to solve it. And leadership is about trying to put forward solutions. And I think that's what the president wants to do. He thinks that in order to lead and try to bring forward the situation, he's willing to put forward something that's very detailed. And he's looking forward to putting that out, and hopefully that leads to a respectful dialogue between the two sides, and we can put the country first and figure out how do we move forward.
Yeah, I think you'll find that because of India being where it is and the India-US relationship being what it is, and people like me are immigrants and are very proud to be here and are very content with what we've kind of got as opportunities here. We're all anxiously awaiting where this goes, because I think the president's idea of creating a merit-based system, in principle, a system that allows for people who come here and get highly educated to feel that they can make their home here and contribute their brains to our future. I just think you'll find very few issues with that. You'll find lots of other areas where people will argue with you. But the principle of what you're trying to do makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that people who try to attack the president say he's anti-immigrant. And just to be very clear, the president is very pro-immigrant. He's anti-illegal immigration. And what he wants to do is make America the land of opportunity, where if you want to go on the website, if you're sitting wherever you are in the world and you want to become an American citizen, right now you can go on our website. You're never going to figure out how to apply unless you hire a lawyer and go through. It's a very, very complicated system. Canada, if you go on the website, within 10 minutes, you could figure out, without a lawyer, you could figure out what visa you want to apply for, how you do it, what qualifications you need. And if you want to have a chance and you don't have the right qualifications, what qualifications do you have to go earn in order to fit the visa pool that they have available? So we want to make it a much more clean system, a much more streamlined system, a much more fair system, and one where most people will have the opportunity to try to become American citizens. And it's it's the greatest privilege in the world to be an American citizen, and that's something that we should make available to people who really want it badly and who want to earn it.
Yeah.
So.
Switching gears on you to another I, immigration, from here to innovation. So I know this is a passion point for you. I know you've got this in your original charter of what you were trying to get done and drive, but you've got some very practical ideas about it, about building the right base, about creating the right databases, about allowing the private sector to innovate on them, about trying to make it possible for America to just be a whole new engine of innovation in the future. You're trying to build a foundation for that. Could you talk a little bit about that? Give us a few ideas, shed a little light on that?
Sure. So again, the hardest thing with the government is it's so big. So the question is, where do you start and how do you really drive change? And so what we tried to do is identify what are the different policies we could focus on that will have the highest impact, and what are the areas we could focus on that will make the biggest difference over time. And so we started with the government IT's modernization, and that was really the first project we started on, because we spend a fortune on outdated technology. I think we have 5 times the amount of IT professionals who are over 60 than under 30. And so we have a lot of very outdated technologies but there hasn't been a lot of impetus to try to make the migration to a much more streamlined system. And that means we have a lot of outdated business processes, and it's a very, very hard thing to change. What we've done is we've created a system mostly at the GSA where we created these things called centers of excellence. Now we've worked with satellite agencies. We started with the Department of Agriculture, and we picked a bunch of different, what I would call very basic functions that a lot of you have probably done in your company 10 years ago, like migrating to the cloud, having cloud-based email systems, things that the government was not doing that should have been done a long time ago, reducing the number of data centers and hopefully eliminating data centers as you go to the cloud. So these are things that will just make much more streamlined, much more secure. And what we did was we said the project management function in government is not something that's as prevalent. So the reason we house this in GSA is we started, as we would do these migrations in the different agencies, we take the learnings, we centralize them, and then if it takes us 6 months to do it one place, and we have all the people who just did it, it will take them 3 months in the next place, and that's been moving along very, very nicely. So we're working on a 10-year plan that we think will do a lot of modernization for the government's IT infrastructure. This will save money, give us better security, and give us better function. I always say that IT is almost like the offensive line. You're only hearing about it when the quarterback gets sacked, so the fact that you don't hear about it too much means it's actually going pretty well. But again, it's not something sexy, and it's going to take a long time, but it's very good, competent management, and it's something that I think will make a big difference over time. And one of the reasons we want to do that too is because we want to make sure we have the right data sets. If you think about the world with artificial intelligence, the government has so much data, and the big thing we want to do is figure out how can we have the right databases, and a lot of our information comes in databases right now that you can't even manipulate to kind of make databases that you could then use for artificial intelligence. So the more we can modernize our infrastructure, the more we'll be able to utilize the tremendous amounts of data we have. And then another big project we've been working on, which I think will also make a big difference, is electronic medical records interoperability. So we've been working with CMS, and we've been making a lot of progress on that, figuring out what are the rules bases. There's been a big push over the last 10 years, and this is something the last administration did a good job on in one component, but failed in the other component. They did a good job in getting a lot of people to digitize, but they didn't put enough push towards making it interoperable. So giving the patient the ability to own their medical records and their data will give them a lot more choice, which will create a lot more competition, which over time should give a lot more price transparency, which we're doing a lot on. And I think these are the type of things that in one of our biggest industries, I think the biggest industry in our country, this is something that really over time could bring a lot of efficiency. So we're working on that. And then there's projects on artificial intelligence, quantum computing, synthetic biologies, a lot of the areas that we're focused on.
This is music to our ears, because this is exactly what, this whole innovation agenda, Jared, India and the US are kind of on a similar trip on innovation, digital for the future, and a lot of the topics that come up about how we can do things together, and how you can't solve the digital space by actually trying to do things against each other. We actually need to get together and figure out how to make the digital economy our future. And people like you who are talking about building the right base for innovation in this country, and people like the Prime Minister who are doing the right base for innovation in that country, we kind of, if we get these two things done the right way, free flow of data, the right kind of collaboration, we could get to a very long way on this game, a really long way.
It will be tremendous. And I will say, in this government, there's, you basically have, I always say that you have, the waves, which is where you kind of hear the different noise in different places. But I think at this point, a lot of people see through that. But I would say underneath the waves, below the water, there's just a tremendous amount of good quality work going on. And I'll say the difference that brings so many business people into Washington is that in politics, you really only get credit when there's a crisis and you solve a crisis. In business, if you're doing your job, you're avoiding future crises and you're creating future opportunities. And the amount of work that's gone into what is our economic agenda, I spoke about it a little bit before when I was introducing Ajay, was really about, what was our competitiveness agenda? What have we done to make America the destination where all businesses want to be, where we're creating jobs? And I do think that right now, you look at the world, our economy is by far the best in the world. And maybe in some ways the best it's ever been. And so I think that we're very excited. And I will say too, I think we've really just gotten started. And if we're able to really continue to execute on these things, and if we can get things done like infrastructure and immigration reform, I do think we'll set America up for another 30, 40 years of tremendous growth and prosperity. And I think that the president has definitely set the right vision. I think he's surrounded himself with some phenomenal people. He's got great teams, great agenda, and I really am so excited about what we're trying to build towards. And I'm just very excited for this country. I think America is by far the greatest country in the world. I'm sorry to my Indian friends, but I believe that. And but I think America is the greatest country, and I think that the president's really exhibited great leadership to figure out how do you make sure that that lasts for a very, very long time.
So last question for you, and on your interest in international, and I'm going to preface it with the work you did for the USMCA. I helped and worked on trade policy for a while, and I believe that what you've got as provisions in the USMCA for the digital economy of tomorrow are among the best any of us could have ever hoped for. Honestly, I thought that TPP had good ideas in it. This one's TPP plus a little bit, and I see the value of that for the future of our digital economy. And I see you played a role in that. And then I see you playing a role in trying to figure out how to get the Middle East to come to a better place. What are the hardest problems in the world? What makes you take on that? What's your interest in it? How are you going about it? Is there anything you can tell us about what you're trying to do with the Middle East process? I know you were just out there with this whole kickoff. So anything you can shed light on, and sure, I'd love to hear more.
Happy to do it. So the Mexico agreement and Canada agreement was one that I had a very close personal relationship with the foreign minister of Mexico, and I believe that even with all the rhetoric that you had during the campaign, that we're not moving Mexico, we're not moving America, and so we got to figure out these problems. And what I realized was that they agreed with a lot of the issues. We both felt the agreement was outdated, and there was a lot of potential if we did, and we both felt like we had to work hard at trying to solve the illegal immigration issue and a lot of the other bilateral issues. So what my counterpart in Mexico said was the good news is we were paying attention to Mexico, and they were happy to get so much attention. The bad news was it was a little bit of hot headlines. So, but I think that we did a lot of great work, and I think we were able to work through what a fair agreement is. We did not do this in a conventional way. Usually these trade agreements, they take 4, 5, 6 years. They do a lot of fancy meetings, and nothing really happens. But with Ambassador Lighthizer and I mean, we probably had over 100 meetings with our Mexican counterpart. A lot of them were private, not in front of the cameras. And we really sat on the same side of the table and said, how do we work out these issues in a really constructive way? And then, we got into the intense moments. We spent about 3 months in a conference room, 18 hours a day, just, really churning and negotiating. And I think we came to what we consider to be a great win-win agreement. I think America wins, I think Mexico wins, and I think it's a really modern agreement that set a lot of standards that will make a difference internationally. And then hopefully we can take these standards and now start putting them into our other bilateral trading relationships. So again, we did not do that in the conventional way, but we did that in the way that we know how as business guys, which is if you want to make a deal, sit down, figure it out, go make a deal. The Middle East, I've tried to take a similar approach. I mean, I respect all the people who've worked on it before, but the reality is that we haven't solved the problem. And so the president asked me to get involved with the issue, and I think in 2 years we've made a lot of progress. And I'll talk about what we just laid out, but if you notice where we started 2 years ago and where we are today, I think that what we found is that we've brought Israel and the Arab countries much, much closer together. And I think that that's a very, very critical element towards having a stable Middle East. I think that the Arab countries are realizing, and their populations are realizing that Israel's not their problem. I was in Bahrain, and they were saying no Israelis ever killed a Bahraini. The Saudis will say no Israelis killed a Saudi. It's not the cause of their issue. You have the Palestinian issue, which is a territorial dispute, and we have to figure out how do we come with a resolution for it. So again, the political issues have become very stale, and these are issues that, basically you look at the list of issues, they're the same issues for 25 years that people have been able to resolve. And so I get criticized by basically the people who have been doing this for a long time, who are criticizing us for not doing it the same way they've done, but the way they've done it hasn't worked. So what we did is we said, if you want, what do the people care about? Forget about the technocrats. What do the people care about? And we believe that the people basically want to have better lives. They want to have dignity. The political issues are important, and I don't want to say they're not. But the people want to live better lives, and they want to be able to have opportunity and prosperity and jobs, and they want their kids to have better futures than they have, and they want their grandkids to have better futures than their kids. So what we did is we built a business plan basically for the Middle East, and we were able to roll it out in Bahrain. We were able to get Israeli business people and Middle Eastern business people, and Israeli journalists and Middle Eastern journalists all together in Bahrain. We had the finance ministers of a lot of the countries there. And it really was a great discussion about what the future of that region can be. Now, I put together a 140-page plan with very, very detailed, a real business plan, and we got almost no criticism on the substance. The biggest criticism we got was on the fact that that we didn't resolve the political issues. I said, wait a minute, but we want people to see what the future could be. We're not talking about this is what could happen if we resolve the political issues. And so in that regards, it was a very, very big success. And I think that what people are looking at is they're saying, what are the different motivations of the leadership? And are we offering something that's virtuous for the people? The people are very interested. We've had the plan downloaded over 1 million times. I thought maybe we'd get 10, 20,000 downloads because it's a pretty niche, item. But over 1 million times, we had tremendous discussion in the Arab world. And I think what a lot of people were saying is, why is the Palestinian leadership not engaging? And if they truly care about their people and want to make the lives of their people better, then they'll engage. And so I think we started a very good discussion. We're going to continue to finalize the economic plan. And then at the right time, we'll lay down a very detailed proposal for the political plan. And look, at the end of the day, you need both parties to come together. You have to do something that's fair. If you want an agreement to be sustained long term, it has to be a fair agreement. And I think we've worked out ways to try to give a balanced agreement where both sides can win. But most importantly, the people can then have opportunity to live a better life. And so, again, we're taking a different approach. I believe that in order for people to resolve a conflict of the past, they have to see the opportunity for a brighter future. And I do think that there's a notion with the Palestinian leadership that they're nervous that if they make a deal, then all the money that's coming in right now may stop coming in. They're nervous that all the meetings that they get all over the world, people, if the cause is resolved, people may not want to take those meetings. So I think they're scared of losing relevance in that regard too. And so, so what we've done is we've tried to lay out a future to say that, look, we all care about the Palestinian people. This is a vision for how to give the Palestinian people a future. And what the comment was from a lot of CEOs is we didn't have politicians there. We had a lot of business guys and CEOs and finance ministers. Is they said that if you want people's lives to get better, you need rule of law. You need an environment that's investable. And if areas are investable, then what you'll have is people will come and invest and jobs will be created, wages will rise, living standards will go up. But people need a basic environment. And what do you need for that environment? You need security, so you need peace for security. And you need governance. And you need governance where corporations are willing to go in and make investments. And until you have those two things, you're not going to work. And so I think a lot of people are looking at it and saying, again, it's not Israel's fault that the Palestinian people are where they are. Look, there are some areas that we can do, but I think Israel's put a lot of restrictions in place to preserve their security. And again, Israel's security is important to this administration. I think it's important to Israel and it's important to the world. But there's a lot of private sector interest in going in and helping the Palestinian people, but you can't do it in Gaza where it's being run by a terror organization in Hamas. You can't, nobody's going and making big investments in the West Bank where there's not really rule of law. I mean, the government basically came out and said, don't go to the conference. And all the big business guys said, well, we have no choice. They're threatening our business. That's not a free and fair environment where any of you guys would want to go and do business. Until there's a real property rights, rule of law, transparency, good governance, people aren't able to really improve their lives. And so I think the people see that, and we've started a very important discussion and a way of looking at this that hasn't been done in a long time, and we're getting a lot of very positive feedback. Actually, Glenn Hubbard wrote a great column in the Wall Street Journal saying that this is the right way to approach it. And I do think over time we'll see that if we keep going this way, our focus is on how do you make the people's lives better, and I think that that's a prescription that a lot of people are looking for. So look, the President Trump is somebody who obviously, is living a great life. He ran for office because he cares about this country, loves his country, thought we were heading in the wrong direction. He didn't run a conventional campaign, and he's not running a conventional government. And he's not trying to allow issues to remain unsolved, but pretend like they're solved. So if an issue is unsolved, he's saying, look, I want my team focused on it. I want to figure out what's our strategy, what's our plan, how are we executing? And he's not afraid of really pushing towards trying to solve things. So in that regard, it's very, very inspiring to work for a leader who's willing to really take on these tough issues and then really allow his teams to formulate new ideas on how to solve them, and then support us to work very hard to try and come up with solutions. So it's been a really amazing experience so far, and I do hope that we're close to some breakthroughs in that region. Because if you look at where that region was when we started 2 years ago, Iran was getting stronger, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, they were very, very empowered. And what you've seen is Iran has been more pushed inward. A lot of these terror groups don't have the same funding they had because we've cut that off by getting out of the JCPOA deal and putting sanctions on. I mean, we've stopped a lot of flow of funds to terror. I think what we found is ISIS, which was really had a very, very big caliphate, is now basically the geographic caliphate has been destroyed. If you think about the work that we're doing with Saudi Arabia and others on fighting the extremist ideology and really trying to get the radicalizers out of the mosques, I think you're seeing tremendous progress. And then in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian issue, I think people are looking at it less through the romanticized traditional diplomatic terms, and they're more looking at it and seeing the problem for what it actually is. And it's only by telling the truth and by looking at things objectively and fairly that you'll ever find breakthroughs. So again, we have a very straight-talking president and somebody who I think is accomplishing things that maybe people never thought were possible. And I really do think that the best is still yet to come.
I hope you can see why it's a pleasure to sit and spend some time with him. You go meet him anytime. The kind of conversation you just had, it ranges all across the space. He understands what he's talking about. He's sincere, transparent, and most importantly, for a guy like me, he's completely accessible. And it's a pleasure and a privilege to get to know you and to spend time with you. And frankly, to get this award from you is a pretty cool thing. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.